In this video, I'm going to talk about JSP Expression Language. First, let's talk about what is a JSP Expression Language. The JSP Expression Language, that means EL, enables easy access to application data contained in Java Beans components. JSP EL allows you to write expressions that are both arithmetic and logical. In a JSP EL expression, you can use integers, floating point numbers, text, boolean, constants, true and false, and null. Let's move on to the simple syntax. When you specify an attribute valid in a JSP tag, you usually just use a string. As an example, here you can see an example. For each of these attribute values, JSP EL allows you to specify an expression. The following is a simple syntax for JSP EL. Here you can see it. So after that, the expression itself is specified by EXPR here. In JSP EL, the most popular operators are AND. Here you can see these two operators allow you to access many Java Bean and built-in JSP object characteristics. For example, the JSP tag mentioned above can be written with an expression like this. When the tag form appears in an attribute, the JSP compiler generates code to evaluate the expression and substitute the value of expressions. For a tag, you can also employ JSP EL expressions within template content. The JSP tag, for example, simply insert its content into the body of a JSP. The JSP statement that follows insert into the JSP output. Here you can see it, and you may now use the same syntax for attributes to include a JSP EL expression in the body of a tag or any other tag. As an example, here you can see an example. Parentheses can be used to group sub-expressions in EL expressions. For instance, this one equal to 9, but this one is equals to 7. To disable the evaluation of EL expressions, we use the page directives is elignode attribute as shown below. Here you can see it, and after that, this attribute has two allowed values, true and false. If this is true, EL expressions in static text or tag attributes are ignored. If it is false, then the container evaluates EL expressions. Let's move on to the basic EL operators. JSP Expressions language supports the majority of Java's arithmetic and logical operators. The following table lists the most often used operators. Let's talk about that. So, first, here you can see a symbol. It is used to get to a bean property or a map entry. And this one used to access an array or list element. So this one group the sub-expression to change the evaluation order. This one is for addition, and this one is to value subtraction or negation. This one is multiplication, and after that this is division, and this is modulo. After that, here you can see equality check, and in here inequality check we do, and after that check for less than, and this is check for greater than text. So after that, this one is text for less than or equal, and this one is for text for greater than or equal. and this one text for logical AND, this is text for logical OR, and after that this is another Boolean complement, and finally this is text for empty variable values. So after the table, let's talk about JSP EL functions. In here, JSP EL also supports the usage of functions in expressions. Custom tag libraries must contain these functions. The syntax for using a function is as follows. Here you can see it, and after that, where ns denotes the function's namespace, funds denotes the function's name, and param is the value of the first parameter. Consider the JSTL library's function. Length has an illustration to determine a string length used as following syntax. To use a function from any tag library, standard or custom, you must first install it on your server and then include it in your JSP using the length directive, tag library, and directive as described in the JSTL chapter. So let's talk about JSP EL implicit objects. The following implicit objects are supported by the JSP expression language. Here, first, page scope, scoped variables from page scope. The second one is request scope. So it is scoped variables from request scope, and third one is session scope, scoped variables from session scope. Fourth one is scoped variables from application scope. Fifth one is param. It is for request parameters as strings, and the sixth one is param values. It is request parameters as collections of strings, and the seventh one is header. It is HTTP request headers as strings, and the eighth one is header values. So it is HTTP request headers as collections of strings, and the 9 is init param. It is context initialization parameters. So we have two more. The 10th one is cookie. It is cookie values, and the 11th one is page context, the JSP page context object for the current page. These objects can be used in expressions much like variables. So the example that follow will assist you in comprehend the concept. Okay. So the page context object, here you can access the page context JSP object via the page context objects. The request object can be accessed via the page context object. To obtain the incoming query string for a request, for example, use the expression this. And object in the scope, variables stored at each scope level as accessible via the page scope, request scope, session scope, and application scope variables. For example, if you need to access the box variable implicitly in the application scope, you can do so via the application scope variable as application scope.box. After that, the param and param value objects. The param and param value objects provide access to the parameter values that are ordinarily valuable via the request and get parameter values methods are available. To access a parameter named order, for example, use the term this or this. The following is an example of how to get a request parameter called username. Here you can see a coding example. You can go through it. The param object returns single string value, whereas the param value object returns arrays of string values. After that, let's talk about header and header values objects. The header and header values classes provide access to the header values that are ordinarily available via the request get header techniques for getting header. To retrieve a user agent header, for example, use the term this or this. The following is an example of how to get a header parameter called user agent. The header values object returns strings arrays rather than single string value. So this is the today's video. Thanks for watching.